Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dream Stories, where fictional stories are made for you, my listeners. So sit back, relax, and listen. Thank you. Today's dream story is called I Once Was a Tree. Let us begin. I once was just a tree, standing as tall as I could be, rooted deep in the rich soil of Mississippi. The soil was my mother, the sun was my father, the rain gave me life, and the gentle winds carried songs from places I would never see. Birds found rest within my branches. Tiny creatures made homes beneath my roots. Travelers paused beneath my shade. Children laughed around my trunk, and for many years, I believed that was all I would ever be. Just a tree. But my story did not begin with bark, or branches, or leaves dancing beneath the morning sun. It began much earlier, long before anyone knew my name, long before anyone called me Roseberry. It began as a single seed, buried beneath the cold earth, waiting, dreaming, listening. Winter had settled over Mississippi like a great white blanket. Frost covered the fields each morning, and the winds drifted across the hills with a quiet song only nature could understand. Above me, the world slept beneath pale skies. Trees stood bare, their branches reaching toward heaven like silent hands, while the river flowed slowly beneath a thin layer of morning mist. I could not see any of it. Not yet. I was hidden safely beneath the earth, wrapped inside darkness that was neither lonely nor frightening. It was warm, comforting, almost as though the soil itself held me close, whispering that my time would come. The earth has a heartbeat, though few humans ever hear it. It is slow, patient, steady. It speaks through roots, through rivers, through falling leaves, and through every tiny seed waiting for its chance to grow. I listened to that heartbeat every day, though I had no ears. I felt it. It became the first rhythm I ever knew. Days became weeks. Weeks became months. The snow above slowly disappeared, and little by little, warmth seeped through the soil. Rain found its way into the earth, soaking every grain of dirt around me. The ground softened, welcoming life back after a long season of sleep. Then, something changed. It was small at first. A gentle pull. A quiet stirring deep within me. Like opening my eyes for the very first time. Without thinking, without knowing how, I stretched. One tiny root reached downward. Then another. Searching. Learning. Holding tightly to the earth that had protected me since the beginning. Soon afterward, a fragile green stem reached upward. The journey was difficult. The soil above was heavy. Every inch demanded patience. Yet something beyond the darkness called to me. The warmth of the sun. Though I had never seen it, I somehow knew it was waiting. Slowly, carefully, I climbed, until one beautiful spring morning. Everything changed. My tiny leaves pushed through the surface. Warm sunlight touched me for the very first time. Oh, what a wonderful feeling it was. The light wrapped around every part of me like the warm embrace of a loving parent. A cool breeze brushed gently against my leaves, and I swayed without understanding why. Above me stretched the bluest sky I had ever imagined. Clouds drifted lazily across it like great white ships sailing an endless ocean. The world was enormous, far larger than I had ever dreamed. Birds filled the air with cheerful songs. Butterflies floated from flower to flower. Honeybees hummed softly as they gathered nectar nearby. The scent of fresh grass mixed with wildflowers dancing across the open fields. Everything felt alive. Everything seemed connected. I was very small. So small, in fact, that many creatures walked past without ever noticing me. A rabbit hopped only inches away. A deer wandered nearby with her young fawn. Even the wind seemed careful not to bend my tiny stem too far. Each new sunrise brought another lesson. Each rainfall made me stronger. Each passing day reminded me that growing was not something to be rushed. Nature has never hurried. Yet somehow, everything arrives exactly when it should. Then, one chilly afternoon, I met the first human who truly saw me. Her footsteps were light, Gentle, careful. She couldn't have been more than 10 years old. A little girl wandered across the field, wearing worn brown boots that crunched softly against the fading frost. A blue prairie dress peeked out beneath her dark coat, while a cream-colored scarf wrapped warmly around her neck. Strands of chestnut brown hair escaped the breeze and danced around her smiling face. She looked lonely. Not the kind of lonely that comes from being alone, but the kind that longs for someone willing to listen. She stopped suddenly. Her curious blue-gray eyes searched the ground. Then, she saw me. Most people would have walked straight past such a tiny sapling. But not her. She slowly knelt until her face was only a short distance from my leaves. For several long moments, she simply smiled. "Well," she whispered, "aren't you the cutest little thing?" If I had possessed a heart like humans do, I believe it would have skipped a beat. No one had ever spoken to me before. Not with words. The birds sang. The wind whispered. The river hummed. But this was different. Her voice was gentle, soft as flowing water. It carried kindness within every word. She looked around to make sure no one else was nearby. Then she leaned a little closer. "I think we could be friends." Friends. I did not yet understand the meaning of that word. But somehow, I hoped she was right. She remained beside me for nearly an hour. She talked about school. She talked about helping around the farmhouse. She spoke of books she hoped to read one day. She wondered what life might be like beyond the hills of Mississippi. Sometimes she laughed. Sometimes she sighed. Once, her eyes filled with tears she quickly wiped away before anyone else could see. I listened to every word, not because I understood everything she said, but because every word came from her heart. When the afternoon sun began sinking lower into the sky, she slowly stood and brushed the dirt from her coat. Before leaving, she gently poured the last of her drinking water around my tiny roots. "There," she said with a warm smile. "Now you'll grow big and strong." She took a few steps away, then turned back one final time. "I'll come see you tomorrow." As her footsteps faded into the distance, I watched until I could no longer see her. The evening breeze drifted through the field. For the first time since breaking through the earth, I no longer felt like I was growing alone. I did not know her name. She did not know mine. But somewhere, deep beneath the soil, the roots remembered the beginning of something beautiful. And though neither of us could have known it then, our lives had become forever intertwined. The seasons were about to change, and with them, so would we. The next morning, I waited. The sun had barely climbed above the distant trees when tiny footsteps echoed across the field once again. The morning dew sparkled like scattered diamonds upon the grass. Birds welcomed the new day with cheerful songs, and a gentle breeze carried the sweet fragrance of blooming wildflowers across the hillside. Then I saw her. She smiled the moment her eyes found me. "I told you I'd come back." There was something comforting about those words. Humans often made promises to one another, but not every promise was kept. Yet somehow, I believed this little girl before she had even spoken a second sentence. She knelt beside me once more, carefully brushing away a few blades of tall grass that had begun growing around my tiny stem. "There," she whispered, "you'll get more sunshine now." She poured a little water around my roots before sitting cross-legged beside me, as though we had been friends for years instead of only a single afternoon. "I don't have many people to talk to," she admitted quietly. "Mama says I talk too much, but you don't seem to mind." No, I didn't mind at all. If anything, I wished she would stay forever. Day after day, she returned. Sometimes the mornings were bright and filled with birdsong. Sometimes gray clouds covered the sky, and rain soaked the fields until everything smelled fresh and new. Sometimes the wind danced wildly through the countryside, making the long grass sway like waves upon a green ocean. No matter the weather, she came. She told me about her lessons at school. She spoke of helping her parents around the farm. She laughed about chasing chickens that never wished to be caught. She wondered what mountains looked like. She imagined what the ocean sounded like. She dreamed about places she had only seen inside books. Although I had never traveled beyond the hill where I stood, listening to her stories made me feel as though I had. As spring became summer, I grew stronger. My stem thickened. New branches stretched toward the sky. Fresh green leaves unfolded every week, reaching eagerly toward the warm Mississippi sun. The little girl noticed every change. "You've grown," she said one morning, placing her hand gently against my young trunk. "I knew you would." She smiled with such pride that I almost believed she had grown me herself. Perhaps in some small way, she had. Not through magic, not through miracles, but through kindness. Kindness has a way of helping all living things grow. The seasons continued their gentle dance. Summer painted the fields with brilliant shades of green. Butterflies floated through the air like tiny pieces of living sunlight. Bluebirds nested nearby. Busy honeybees hummed from blossom to blossom. Life surrounded me everywhere I looked. And always, she was there. One afternoon, she arrived carrying a small wooden bucket. She looked around carefully before placing it upside down beside me. "There," she laughed as she sat upon it. "Now I have my own chair." For the next hour, she read aloud from a worn storybook. Every character became real inside her voice. Brave explorers crossed great rivers. Knights protected distant kingdoms. Children discovered hidden treasures. Though I could not understand every word, I understood her joy. Her imagination was as wide as the endless sky above us. Autumn arrived with colors unlike anything I had ever seen. My leaves transformed into brilliant shades of gold, amber, and crimson. They fluttered gently through the air before settling softly upon the earth below. The little girl laughed as they drifted around her. "You look beautiful," she whispered. No one had ever called me beautiful before. Winter returned once again. Snow rested upon my young branches. The cold winds returned. Many birds flew south. Most flowers disappeared beneath the frost. Yet even then, she came. Wrapped in her thick brown coat and cream-colored scarf, she brushed snow away from the ground before sitting beside me. "I don't want you to be lonely." If only she knew. She had already made cert that I never would be. Years passed quietly, without noticing exactly when it happened. The little girl became taller. Her voice changed. Her laughter became softer. Her thoughts became deeper. She still smiled often, but sometimes sadness rested behind her eyes. One spring afternoon, she arrived carrying tears she tried very hard to hide. She sat beneath my growing branches without speaking for a long time. Finally, she sighed. "I miss Grandma." The breeze moved gently through my leaves. "I wish people didn't have to leave." A single tear rolled down her cheek before falling into the earth around my roots. It disappeared beneath the soil. But I remembered. Trees remember differently than people. Humans remember with photographs, with journals, with treasured keepsakes. We remember through water, through roots, through the quiet places where tears become part of the earth itself. Nothing shared beneath my branches was ever truly lost. The years continued flowing like the nearby river. I was no longer a tiny sapling. My trunk had become thick enough for birds to perch comfortably upon my branches. Squirrels raced playfully along my limbs. Robins built nests each spring. Children from neighboring farms sometimes rested beneath my growing shade. Still, she came, though now she no longer looked like the lonely child who had first discovered me. She had become a graceful young woman. Her chestnut brown hair had grown long, catching the sunlight whenever the wind played through it. The freckles across her cheeks remained, and the kindness in her blue-gray eyes had never faded. She leaned comfortably against my trunk one warm summer evening. "I've been thinking." The sky above glowed orange as the sun slowly drifted toward the horizon. "I suppose I should finally give you a proper name." She looked upward through my branches, watching clusters of delicate blossoms swaying gently in the evening breeze. "You always bloom with the prettiest flowers." She smiled. And those berries that arrive every season, they're beautiful too. She rested her hand against my bark. I think, Roseberry. She laughed softly. That's what I'll call you. Roseberry. The wind carried the name through every leaf. Birds sang as though celebrating. Even the river seemed to whisper it as it flowed beyond the fields. For the first time, I had a name. Not given by nature, not given by the earth, but given by my very first friend. From that day forward, whenever she visited, she greeted me the same way. Good morning, Roseberry. Or, hello again, Roseberry. Simple words, yet they filled my branches with quiet happiness every single time. Then one evening, she arrived with a different smile upon her face. It was brighter, warmer, filled with excitement she could hardly contain. She sat beneath my shade and clasped her hands together. Oh, Roseberry, I have something wonderful to tell you. The breeze slowed. The birds grew quiet. Even I seemed to lean ever so slightly closer. Whatever she was about to say, I somehow knew. Our lives were about to change once again. The evening breeze moved gently through my branches, carrying with it the sweet fragrance of wildflowers and freshly cut hay. The sky had begun to glow with shades of gold, amber, and soft pink, as though the heavens themselves had painted the clouds for the close of another beautiful day. My leaves rustled quietly. The birds settled into their nests. Even the river beyond the hill seemed to slow its endless journey, reflecting the warm colors of the fading sky. Then, I heard her footsteps. She was almost running, not because she was afraid, but because excitement carried her across the field faster than her feet could keep up. She reached me laughing, slightly out of breath, and rested both hands against my trunk. Oh, Roseberry, she whispered with a smile so bright it seemed to rival the setting sun. I've been waiting all day to tell you. If I could have smiled, I would have. She sat beneath my branches as she had done countless times before, leaning comfortably against my bark. For a few moments, she simply looked toward the horizon. Her cheeks flushed with happiness. Then she spoke. I'm getting married. The words drifted upward with the evening breeze. They settled among my leaves. They echoed through every branch. Married, though I had never witnessed a wedding before, I understood enough from the many conversations I had overheard through the years to know what the word meant. It meant two lives choosing to walk together. It meant promises. It meant hope. It meant love. She laughed softly to herself. I suppose you've already guessed. She looked upward through my branches, watching tiny birds flutter from limb to limb. His name is Albert. She paused. Albert Steen. The name settled deep within my memory. Albert Steen. Like the first rainfall after a long drought. Some names simply become part of the earth. She spent the rest of the evening telling me everything about him. How they had first met. How kind he had always been. How he listened before speaking. How he worked harder than anyone she had ever known. How he could make her laugh even after the longest day. Her words flowed like the nearby river. Never hurried. Never forced. Every sentence carried the warmth of someone speaking from the heart. I've never felt this way before. She smiled toward the fading sun. When I'm with him, the world feels quieter somehow. The breeze moved gently through my blossoms. I think you'd like him, Roseberry. I already believed I would. Before darkness settled over the countryside, she placed one gentle hand upon my trunk. I'll still come visit. Her voice became softer. I promise. Promises, I had learned through the years, were precious things. Some lasted a lifetime. Others lasted only a season. Still, I believed her. The following week, I finally met Albert Steen. Long before I saw him, I heard steady footsteps approaching beside hers. When they emerged over the hill together, she was smiling exactly as she always did. Albert, however, looked uncertain. So, he said with a small laugh, This is the famous tree I've heard so much about. She nodded proudly. This is Roseberry. This concludes part 1 of the story. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this story, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe to tune back in next week, where more stories and continuations will be added. Remember, every story begins with a dream and grows from an imagination. Dream beautifully. Everyone,